You trust continuity. You trust that the next second will resemble the last one, that the laws of physics don't suddenly change their mind, that reality doesn't blink. This trust is not based on evidence. It is a survival instinct. Every experience you've ever had reinforces the same assumption: the universe evolves smoothly. Cause follows effect. Tomorrow arrives. But physics does not guarantee this. In fact, when physicists write down the equations that govern reality at its deepest level, they discover something unsettling. There is no rule that says the universe must warn you before it ends. No countdown, no instability phase, no visible precursor. According to our best theories, reality can fail instantly and locally, without violating a single known law. One moment, atoms exist. The next moment, the rules that allow atoms to exist are gone, not destroyed, replaced. This is not science fiction. This is a direct consequence of quantum field theory. To understand why this is possible, you need to abandon the idea that empty space is passive. Vacuum is not nothing. What you call empty space is actually the lowest energy configuration of multiple interacting quantum fields. It is an active structure held in place by precise numerical balances. Think of it less like emptiness and more like a loaded configuration file. As long as those values remain stable, matter exists. Time flows. Chemistry works. But stability in physics does not mean permanence. It means metastability, a system that appears stable only because it has not yet fallen. Imagine a ball resting in a shallow dip on a hillside. From where you stand, it looks motionless. It has been still for billions of years, but it is not at the lowest point. There is a deeper valley below it, one the ball would prefer to occupy if given the chance. In quantum mechanics, that chance does not require a push. Particles do not need permission to cross barriers. They tunnel. This means that the vacuum state of the universe, the structure holding reality together, does not need to be disrupted by an explosion, a collision, or an external force. It can decay spontaneously at any location, at any time, without cause. When this happens, a region of space transitions into a lower energy vacuum state. Inside that region, the constants of nature change. The mass of the electron changes, the strength of the electromagnetic force changes. The rules that allow protons to bind into nuclei change. Atoms cannot survive this transition, not because they are destroyed, but because they are no longer permitted. The new physics simply does not include chemistry. This transition propagates as a bubble, not at the speed of sound, not at the speed of shock waves, at the speed of light. This is the critical detail. Light is the fastest possible carrier of information. If a bubble of vacuum decay is expanding at light speed, the information that it exists reaches you at the exact same moment it arrives. You do not see it coming. There is no flash, no heat, no pain. One frame of reality exists. The next frame does not. From your perspective, the universe does not end. It simply stops being there. And from the outside, if such a perspective even exists, nothing unusual happens. Physics continues, just not in a form compatible with you. What makes this disturbing is not the probability. Physicists are careful to say the odds are extremely low, but physics does not deal in comfort. It deals in permission, and this outcome is permitted. The universe does not owe you continuity, it owes you consistency, and this scenario violates none. The equations remain intact, energy is conserved, causality is respected, reality ends cleanly. This forces a difficult realization. Your confidence in the future is not grounded in physics, it is grounded in habit. You assume tomorrow because yesterday happened. But that assumption is psychological, not physical. The laws of nature describe how reality behaves, not how long it must continue behaving that way. And when physicists look closely, they see something chilling. The universe does not appear built for permanence. It appears built for balance, temporary balance. Before we go any further, if you enjoy calm, slow journeys through the universe, you can subscribe to Theories Before Sleep, and let these stories accompany you into the night. You trust the ground beneath your feet, not because you have checked it, but because it has never failed you before. It feels solid, predictable, reliable. You trust that the atoms in your body will continue to behave tomorrow the way they behave today. That gravity will still pull downward. That time will still move forward. That reality will not suddenly reinterpret itself. This trust is not logical, it is learned. Every living organism that doubted continuity too deeply did not survive long enough to pass on that doubt. Certainty is selected for, anxiety is filtered out. Physics does not share this instinct. When physicists describe the universe mathematically, they do not describe something permanent. They describe something temporarily consistent. The difference matters. In everyday language, stable means unchanging. In physics, stable only means unchallenged so far. The equations that govern reality do not promise endurance. They describe conditions under which structures are allowed to exist, and those conditions are narrower than you think. At the most fundamental level, reality is not built from objects. It is built from fields. Every particle you have ever heard of, electrons, quarks, photons, is not a thing moving through space. It is a vibration in a field that fills all of space. You are not made of matter, you are made of configurations, and configurations can change. The stability of the universe depends on a delicate arrangement of these fields settling into a specific energy state. Physicists call this state the vacuum. The word is misleading. A vacuum is not emptiness, it is the lowest energy arrangement the universe currently occupies. Currently, to understand why this is dangerous, you need to understand how physics defines lowest. In classical thinking, the lowest state is absolute. A ball rolls downhill and stays at the bottom. Quantum mechanics breaks this intuition. In quantum systems, energy landscapes are layered. There can be valleys within valleys, local minima that are not global minima. A system can appear stable while still being wrong. Imagine a ball resting in a shallow dip halfway down a hill. It does not roll. It does not move. From your perspective, it looks settled, but below it is a deeper valley. The ball is stable only because it has not yet fallen. This is what physicists mean when they say the universe may be metastable. Metastable does not mean fragile. It means delayed. According to calculations based on the measured mass of the Higgs boson and the top quark, the vacuum state of our universe may not be the lowest possible configuration. It may be a false vacuum, a temporary shelf, a paused fall. This is not speculation pulled from philosophy. It falls directly out of the standard model when extrapolated to high energies. The same model that predicts the behavior of every particle accelerator experiment ever conducted. The same model that built modern technology, the same model you trust every time your phone works. In that model, nothing prevents the vacuum from transitioning into a lower energy state. Nothing forbids it. There is no conservation law protecting the universe from changing its mind. The only reason it hasn't happened yet may be the same reason a radioactive atom hasn't decayed yet. Not impossibility, just delay. Radioactive decay does not require a cause. An atom does not wait for permission. At some unpredictable moment, the configuration tunnels into a lower energy state. No warning, no trigger. Vacuum decay works the same way. The universe does not need to be pushed. It only needs to exist long enough. Quantum tunneling allows systems to cross barriers they do not have the energy to climb over. This is not rare behavior. It is fundamental. It is why the sun shines. It is why fusion occurs. It is why matter itself exists. The same mechanism that powers stars also permits the universe to end. If a transition occurs, if a tiny region of space tunnels into a lower energy vacuum, the physics inside that region changes instantly. The constants you rely on are not constants anymore. The electron mass shifts. The strength of electromagnetism shifts. The balance that allows atoms to bind vanishes. Not violently, quietly. Inside that region, chemistry becomes impossible. Molecules cannot form, nuclei cannot remain stable, structures unravel not because they are destroyed, but because they are no longer allowed by the rules. This region does not remain localized. Energy prefers the lowest state. Once a lower energy vacuum appears, it expands relentlessly. The boundary between the old universe and the new one moves outward at the maximum speed allowed by reality, the speed of light. This is the detail that removes all comfort. Light is how information travels. If the boundary is moving at light speed, the information that it exists cannot outrun it. There is no advanced signal, no flash on the horizon, no anomaly to study, no moment of realization. From your frame of reference, there is no event. One moment, neural activity is occurring. The next moment, the conditions that allow neural activity do not exist. The transition does not register as pain. Pain requires a nervous system. A nervous system requires chemistry. The ending is not experienced. It is simply not avoided. This is why physicists describe this scenario as an ending with no warning, not because it is dramatic, but because warning is physically impossible. Now here is the part that usually gets softened. Physicists often say the probability is extremely low. They talk about timescales longer than the age of the universe. This is meant to reassure, but probability does not work the way intuition suggests. A non-zero probability does not care about timescales. It only cares about permission. If an outcome is allowed, the universe does not need to justify when it occurs. It only needs to occur once. You cannot be reassured by the fact that something has not happened yet. Radioactive atoms spend most of their existence not decaying. Until they do, the universe has existed for 13.8 billion years without vacuum decay. That does not mean it is safe. It only means the coin has not yet landed on that side. And here is the deeper problem. You cannot meaningfully assign comfort to probabilities when the consequence is absolute. There is no recovery scenario. There is no partial damage. There is no surviving observer to learn from the event. The universe either continues or it does not. This places vacuum decay in a unique category. It is not a disaster. It is not a catastrophe. It is a termination condition. What makes this unsettling is not the mathematics. It is the realization it forces. Your confidence in the future is not grounded in physics. It is grounded in repetition. You assume tomorrow because yesterday happened. But the laws of physics do not contain a rule called keep going. They contain rules about behavior if conditions hold. Physics describes how reality behaves, not how long it must continue behaving that way. When physicists say the universe is metastable, they are saying something very specific. They are saying existence is provisional, conditional, borrowed. And that realization reframes everything. It means the universe is not a fortress, it is a balancing act. A temporary arrangement of fields that happens to support complexity. For now, the silence of space is not reassurance. The regularity of nature is not a promise. The fact that nothing has gone wrong yet is not evidence that nothing can. It is simply the current state of a system that has no obligation to remain in it. In the next part, we will move closer. We will stop talking about the universe as a whole and start talking about location, because vacuum decay is not required to happen everywhere at once. It only needs to happen somewhere, and physics offers no protection based on distance, no safe region, no favored coordinates, just space, waiting. When people imagine the end of the universe, they imagine distance. They picture destruction arriving from far away. A wave you can see on the horizon, a center and an edge. This instinct is wrong. Physics does not privilege location. There is no far in the way you think there is. There is only separation measured by rules. And those rules offer no protection. Vacuum decay does not spread through space like fire spreads through a forest. Fire needs fuel. Fire respects barriers. Vacuum decay does not. It does not consume matter. It replaces the rules matter depends on. This means it does not need to start at the center of the universe. It does not need to originate near massive objects. It does not need energy density, collisions, or extreme environments. It can happen anywhere, a void between galaxies, interstellar space, the region you are occupying right now. Location does not matter because the vacuum is everywhere. The quantum fields that define reality do not live in space. They are space. Every point is equivalent. There is no reinforced zone, no shelter, no cosmological basement. When physicists calculate the probability of vacuum decay, they do not calculate it per universe. They calculate it per unit volume, per point, per moment. This means the question is not, will the universe end? The question is, why hasn't a decay occurred at any of the infinite available locations yet? This is not comforting. It means the universe has been playing an unfathomably large game of chance, and you are inside the table. You might think distance buys time. If a decay starts far away, surely you have warning. This intuition is inherited from explosions, waves, and radiation. Those things propagate through space slower than light. Vacuum decay does not. The boundary between the old vacuum and the new vacuum expands at light speed because it is not a signal moving through space. It is space itself changing state. There is no medium to outrun it. There is no buffer. This eliminates the possibility of early detection. Astronomy cannot help you. Telescopes detect light. By the time light from a decay reaches you, the decay has already arrived. There is no shadow, no distortion, no precursor radiation. The universe does not flicker before it switches. This also means there is no outside perspective. If a decay occurs 1 billion light years away, the universe continues normally for 1 billion years, until it doesn't. From your perspective, nothing is wrong. From the universe's perspective, the outcome is already sealed. This disconnect between cosmic events and subjective experience creates a dangerous illusion. You feel safe because nothing feels urgent. Physics does not operate on urgency. It operates on inevitability. If something is permitted, the only variable is when. And here is the part most people miss. Time does not reduce risk. Time increases exposure. The longer a metastable system exists, the more opportunities it has to transition. Each moment is another chance. Each cubic meter is another lottery ticket. Each second multiplies the number of trials. The universe is not approaching safety. It is accumulating risk. This is why physicists do not describe vacuum decay as a future event. They describe it as a background process, always possible, always allowed, just not yet realized. Now consider something uncomfortable. You exist at a specific location in space-time. You are not spread out evenly. You occupy a narrow thread of the universe's history. Your survival depends on every point along that thread remaining compatible with your existence. One incompatible point ends the story. And that point does not need to be near anything meaningful. It does not need to be near stars, planets, or observers. It does not need to be noticed. It only needs to exist. This means there is no strategy. You cannot move away from risk. You cannot monitor danger. You cannot prepare. Preparation assumes continuity. Physics does not promise continuity. This is why vacuum decay is fundamentally different from every other existential threat. Asteroids can be tracked. Supernovae can be predicted. Heat death unfolds slowly. Vacuum decay does not unfold. It happens. This brings us to a deeper problem. If the universe is metastable, why does anything exist at all? Why hasn't decay already occurred? Why do we observe a universe that has lasted billions of years? This question leads to an uncomfortable answer. Observation itself is biased. You are not a random sample of reality. You are a filtered outcome. You only exist in branches of history where the vacuum has not decayed. This sounds trivial. It is not. It means your observation of stability cannot be used as evidence of safety. The fact that you are here proves only one thing, that the ending has not occurred yet along your world line. Every universe where decay occurred has no observers to report it. Stability is not selected because it is common. It is selected because instability erases witnesses. This is called observer selection bias. It infects cosmology at the deepest level. You cannot see endings that erase you. You cannot remember them. You cannot measure their frequency. This makes vacuum decay invisible until it happens. And when it happens, there is no one left to notice. Now consider how this reframes meaning. Human civilization assumes continuity. Every plan, every law, every story relies on tomorrow. But physics does not guarantee tomorrow. It only allows it, and allowance is not assurance. The universe does not have to justify itself to you. It does not need to maintain conditions favorable to life. Life is an emergent side effect, not a design constraint. When physicists say the universe may be metastable, they are not saying disaster is imminent. They are saying permanence is not fundamental. They are saying the universe does not have a built-in future, only a present. This realization does something subtle to your sense of time. It breaks the idea that the future is a place you are moving toward. The future is not guaranteed. It is conditional, and the condition is not under your control. Now, let's address a common misunderstanding. People hear vacuum decay and imagine annihilation. They imagine destruction. This is incorrect. Destruction implies loss. Vacuum decay is replacement. The universe does not vanish. It continues in a different configuration, one incompatible with structure, one incompatible with observers. This means, from a purely physical standpoint, nothing goes wrong. The laws remain consistent, energy is conserved, the equations hold. The universe simply chooses a lower energy solution. From physics' perspective, this is optimization. From your perspective, it is erasure. This asymmetry matters. It means physics is not hostile. It is indifferent. Indifference is worse. A hostile universe might be reasoned with. An indifferent one does not care if you exist. It does not even notice when you stop. This forces a re-evaluation of safety. Safety is not about avoiding danger. It is about existing in a configuration that remains permitted. Right now, your existence is permitted. That is the only fact. There is no guarantee it will remain so. In the next part, we will confront the most disturbing implication of all. Not that the universe can end without warning, but that physics cannot tell us whether the ending is close or unimaginably far. Because the equations that allow vacuum decay also destroy the concept of countdowns. There is no ticking clock, there is only allowance, and allowance does not age. Human beings are wired to look for clocks. When something is dangerous, you expect a timer, a rising curve, a final phase. This instinct is so deep that even abstract threats are framed as deadlines. Climate change has milestones, stars have lifespans, civilizations rise and fall on graphs. We cope by believing the future approaches gradually. Physics does not work this way. Vacuum decay has no countdown. There is no parameter that trends towards zero, no instability that grows louder, no warning light that flickers before failure. The equations that allow the universe to end do not contain a time variable that ticks toward catastrophe. They contain a permission, and permission does not age. This is the part that is hardest to accept. In most physical processes, probability accumulates in a way intuition understands. A star burns fuel, a machine wears down, a structure weakens. Vacuum decay does none of these. The vacuum does not fatigue, it does not crack, it does not approach failure. It either transitions or it does not. Every moment is identical. The risk today is not higher than the risk a billion years ago, and it is not lower. This breaks the human sense of narrative. We want to believe survival so far means safety later. Physics does not reward survival with protection. It treats every moment independently. Each instant of time presents the same question to reality. Will the configuration persist or will it not? No memory is kept. No progress is made. This means the universe is not moving toward an ending. It is simply existing in a state that has not yet changed. This also means the phrase, "How long do we have?" has no meaning. There is no we in the equation. There is no have. There is only allowance. This is why physicists cannot give you a date. Not because the math is incomplete, but because the math explicitly forbids forecasting. If you imagine the universe as a coin balanced on its edge, you assume time will eventually knock it over, but that is a classical picture. In quantum mechanics, the coin does not wobble. It simply exists in a metastable configuration until it doesn't. No warning wobble, no approach, just transition. Now consider what this does to prediction. In most risks, you can monitor precursors. Seismic stress builds before earthquakes. Magnetic fields twist before solar flares. Vacuum decay has no precursor. There is no measurable buildup of instability. There is no signal in the cosmic background. There is no fluctuation that grows over time. This means physics is blind to proximity. Even if the universe were to end tomorrow, there would be no data today indicating that fact. Not because our instruments are insufficient, but because the structure of reality provides no information channel. This makes vacuum decay uniquely invisible. It is not hidden. It is unknowable, and unknowable threats behave differently in the human mind. They cannot be feared properly. They cannot be planned around. They cannot be incorporated into meaning. This usually leads to dismissal. If it can't be predicted, the mind says, it's not real. Physics disagrees. The universe does not need to be predictable to be permitted. Now let's confront a subtle error people make. They hear low probability and imagine unlikely, but probability without timescale is not comfort. If an event has a 1 in a trillion chance per second, that does not mean it will not happen. It means each second asks the same question again. Indefinitely, the universe does not get tired of asking. This destroys the idea of safety by longevity. You cannot say, it hasn't happened in 13.8 billion years, so we're safe. You can only say, it has not happened yet is doing all the emotional work. Now consider the psychological implication. Your sense of future relies on the idea that tomorrow is more likely than not. Physics does not assign likelihoods that way, it assigns amplitudes. And amplitudes do not care about your expectations. The universe does not lean toward continuation. It does not lean toward collapse. It is balanced, and balance is unstable by definition. The universe appears extraordinarily stable. Galaxies persist for billions of years. Atoms last indefinitely. The laws of physics appear constant. Yet at the deepest level, this stability has no lock. It is not enforced. It is merely ongoing. Think carefully about what this means. You are not living in a universe that is guaranteed to exist tomorrow. You are living in a universe that has not yet chosen a different configuration. That distinction matters. Now let's address a comforting counter-argument. Some physicists suggest that even if vacuum decay is allowed, the timescale is unimaginably long, longer than the age of the universe. Longer than the lifetime of stars. This is often said with relief, but this misunderstands the problem. A long expected lifetime does not create a countdown, it creates a flat probability distribution. If the decay rate is constant, the risk tomorrow is the same as the risk today. Long averages do not imply late occurrence. Radioactive atoms illustrate this perfectly. An atom may have a half-life of billions of years. That does not mean it cannot decay now. Half-life is not a schedule, it is a statistic. This means even if vacuum decay is extraordinarily rare, rarity does not push it into the distant future. It distributes it across all time, including now. Now confront the most uncomfortable implication. If physics cannot predict when the universe might end, then physics cannot tell you whether you are early or late. You might be at the beginning of an unimaginably long, stable era, or you might be standing at the edge of the only moment that ever existed. There is no way to know. No experiment can distinguish between those two scenarios. This is not ignorance, it is structural. Reality does not encode its own future. This forces a reframing of cosmology. Cosmology is often presented as a story with a beginning, middle and end. Big Bang, structure formation, heat death, vacuum decay breaks that narrative. It inserts an unannounced full stop anywhere in the sentence. This means the universe does not necessarily age toward death. It persists until it does not. Now, let's bring this closer. Human consciousness depends on continuity. Memory assumes the past existed. Expectation assumes the future will exist. Vacuum decay undermines the second assumption completely. There is no physical law guaranteeing that the sequence of moments continues. The next moment is not promised, it is merely allowed. This changes the meaning of time. Time is not a river flowing forward, it is a chain of permitted states. Each link is independent. Nothing requires the chain to continue. And this leads to a realization that is difficult to articulate. Existence is not moving towards something. It is being reapproved at every instant, not by a judge, not by intent, by mathematics. If the configuration remains allowed, the universe continues. If not, it doesn't. There is no appeal. Now ask yourself something carefully. Does this mean the universe is fragile? No. Fragility implies weakness. The universe is not weak. It is indifferent. It does not protect itself. It does not defend its own structure. It simply follows the path of least energy. If a lower energy state is available, physics prefers it. No exception is made for life. No exception is made for meaning. No exception is made for awareness. This brings us to the hardest part of all. You cannot assign moral weight to this ending. There is no villain, no mistake, no failure. The universe does not collapse. It optimizes. And optimization does not care who gets erased. In the next part, we will confront what this means for observation itself, because if the universe can end without warning, and if no observer can ever witness that ending, then something profound follows. It means reality may have already ended countless times, and the only versions of reality that remain are the ones where the ending did not occur. Which means your existence may already be filtered by survival, not once but constantly. And that changes what it means to be here at all. You assume you are witnessing reality as it is. You assume the universe you observe is representative, that what you see reflects what exists. This assumption is false. You do not observe reality in general, you observe reality conditional on your existence. This distinction is subtle and devastating. If the universe were to end abruptly, there would be no observers left to register that ending. No record, no memory, no data point, which means every observation you ever make is automatically filtered. You only ever find yourself in universes that have not ended. This is not philosophy. It is a direct consequence of physics. Observers cannot exist in regions where the conditions for observation fail. This seems obvious, until you realize what it implies. It means the universe does not need to be stable everywhere. It only needs to be stable where observers happen to be. And observers, by definition, can only appear where stability persists. This creates a selection effect so powerful it reshapes cosmology. You are not sampling reality randomly, you are sampling the tiny fraction of reality compatible with continued observation. Everything else is invisible. This is called observer selection, and it breaks intuition. Imagine a vast forest where lightning strikes randomly. Most trees burn instantly. A few by chance are never struck. If a conscious tree evolved, it would conclude lightning is rare, not because lightning is rare, but because struck trees don't observe anything. Your situation is identical. Vacuum decay may occur frequently on cosmic scales, but every region where it occurs is instantly erased from the set of possible observers. Those regions leave no witnesses, no ruins, no scars, just absence. This means your experience of a stable universe tells you nothing about how often instability occurs. It only tells you that instability has not yet occurred here. This is not reassurance. It is disqualification of evidence. Now consider how this applies to time. You exist at a particular moment in cosmic history. You assume this moment is ordinary. Physics gives you no reason to believe that. If the universe is metastable, then the longer it persists, the less likely it is that any observers will exist at later times. Why? Because instability erases future observers. This creates a bias toward early observation. Observers tend to find themselves closer to the beginning of a metastable era, not because the beginning is special, but because the end deletes witnesses. This may explain something unsettling. The universe appears young. Stars are still forming. Energy gradients still exist. Complexity is still possible. We often treat this as coincidence, but it may be selection. You are not early because the universe favors life. You are early because late universes do not permit observers. This reframes your position in time. You are not living in a mature cosmos. You are living in a temporary window, one that exists only because the ending has not yet arrived. And this window does not need to be wide. It only needs to be wide enough for awareness to flicker on. Now, consider something darker. If vacuum decay is allowed, and if it can occur anywhere, then the universe has had countless opportunities to end over billions of years, across infinite points in space. Yet here you are. This does not mean decay is unlikely. It means you are standing in one of the surviving branches. Every branch where decay occurred contains no observers. They do not complain, they do not warn. They do not show up in data, they are silent, because silence is all that remains. This leads to a disturbing possibility. The universe may already be riddled with endings, not approaching, already behind you. You are not moving toward an ending, you are moving along a narrow thread that has avoided them. This is not poetic language, it is how probability works under observer selection. You do not need to assume many universes to reach this conclusion. You only need to accept that different regions of space-time can have different histories, and physics allows that. This means the universe is not a single continuous story. It is a patchwork of allowed and disallowed regions. You only experience the allowed ones. Now reflect on how this changes meaning. You often ask, why does the universe exist at all? But a better question is, why does the universe still exist here? The answer may not be purpose, it may be filtering. Regions that remain compatible with structure persist. Regions that do not are gone. No intent required, no plan, just selection. This is unsettling because it removes the comfort of rarity. If the universe ended everywhere else, you would not know. If the universe ended 1 trillion times, you would not know. You would only ever experience the version where it didn't. This means survival does not imply safety, it implies filtration. You are not lucky, you are permitted. So far. Now let's address a common misunderstanding. People hear this and imagine many universes, parallel realities, branches. That is not required. Even a single universe with local vacuum decay behaves this way. Each decay event removes a region from the future. The remaining regions continue. Observers exist only in those remaining regions. From their perspective, nothing unusual has happened. The universe appears continuous, stable, normal. This is the most dangerous illusion of all, the illusion of normalcy. Normalcy is not evidence of permanence, it is evidence of selection. Now consider the psychological effect of this. You experience continuity. You wake up each day expecting the world to still be there. This expectation is reinforced every time it is fulfilled, but physics does not reward expectations. It only enforces constraints. Your experience of continuity says nothing about tomorrow. It only describes yesterday. Now confront the hardest implication. If observation is filtered, then explanations that rely on observation are incomplete. You cannot use the fact that the universe exists to argue that it is safe. You cannot use the fact that laws appear constant to argue they are immutable. You cannot use your survival as evidence of protection. Every argument you construct is conditioned on the ending not having happened yet. This is a logical trap, and physics offers no escape. This also reframes the role of consciousness. Consciousness does not observe reality impartially. It is the residue left behind by survivable physics. It exists only where the equations allow it. This means awareness is not a feature of the universe. It is a byproduct of allowed configurations. If those configurations disappear, awareness disappears with them. No warning, no record, no trace. This is why vacuum decay is uniquely unsettling, not because it threatens life, but because it erases explanation. There is no after to analyze, no ruins to interpret, no data to collect. The universe does not become hostile, it becomes incompatible. Now ask yourself something quietly. If the universe can end without warning, if no observer can ever witness that ending, and if every observation is conditioned on survival, then what does it mean to say the universe has existed continuously? From whose perspective? Continuity is only defined for observers. Physics does not require continuity. It only requires consistency within an allowed state. The universe does not promise to stay in one. In the next part, we will address the final discomfort, not about physics, but about meaning. Because once you accept that existence is conditional, filtered, and unannounced, you are forced to ask a question that physics cannot answer, not whether the universe will end, but whether the fact that it hasn't yet means anything at all. You are still here. This fact feels meaningful. It feels like evidence. You interpret continued existence as a signal, a quiet reassurance that the universe is, at least for now, on your side. This interpretation is natural. It is also incorrect. Survival is not proof of safety. It is proof of non-erasure so far. Physics does not reward persistence. It does not acknowledge endurance. It does not keep score. Every moment you remain alive feels like confirmation. But confirmation of what? Not stability, not protection, not favor, only compatibility. You exist because the configuration of reality at this moment still permits your existence. That is the entire explanation. Nothing about that statement implies continuation. This is the mistake human intuition keeps making. We treat survival as momentum. Physics treats it as coincidence. Consider how this differs from ordinary danger. If you walk across a road and are not hit by a car, you feel safer the next time. Your brain updates its model. It assumes the environment is less hostile than expected. This works because cars are external agents. They have patterns. They respond to rules. They can be avoided. Vacuum decay is not an agent. It has no intent, no behavior, no pattern that responds to observation. You cannot learn from surviving it because you have never survived it. You have only existed where it has not occurred. This distinction destroys the logic of reassurance. Now, consider something uncomfortable. You often hear that the universe is finely tuned for life, that if certain constants were slightly different, nothing would exist. This is often presented as miraculous. But in a metastable universe, fine-tuning does not imply care. It implies narrow tolerance. A system balanced on precise values is not protected. It is exposed. The more finely tuned a system is, the easier it is to invalidate. Life does not exist because the universe wants it. Life exists because the current configuration accidentally allows it. Accidents do not promise duration. They only explain presence. This reframes what it means to be alive. You are not living in a universe that has chosen life. You are living in a universe that has not yet chosen otherwise. And choice is the wrong word. There is no chooser. There is only a lower energy option waiting. Now let's confront the emotional reflex this triggers. You want to ask whether this matters. If the ending comes without warning, without pain, without awareness, why worry? This question reveals something important. You are still trying to frame the ending as an experience. It is not. Vacuum decay is not a moment you live through. It is the absence of moments. There is no suffering, there is no peace, there is no transition, which means fear is misplaced. The threat is not that you will experience something terrible. The threat is that experience itself is provisional. This is much harder to emotionally process because meaning relies on continuity, plans rely on continuity, memory relies on continuity, hope relies on continuity. Physics does not guarantee any of these. It only guarantees internal consistency while a configuration holds. This leads to a dangerous misunderstanding. People think that because the ending is painless, it is less serious. But pain is not the measure of significance. Erasure is. Now think carefully about what survival teaches you. You wake up each morning and the world is still there. Your brain interprets this as reliability, but the universe has not made a promise. It has merely not changed yet. Imagine standing on a frozen lake. Every step that does not break the ice makes you feel safer, but the thickness of the ice has not changed. Your confidence has. This is exactly how survival works in a metastable system. Each safe moment increases belief without increasing protection. This is why survival is misleading. It trains trust in a system that is not committed to you. Now confront a deeper implication. If survival does not imply safety, then meaning cannot be grounded in duration. You cannot say something matters because it will last. Nothing is guaranteed to last. You cannot say progress accumulates toward permanence. There is no permanence. This destabilizes many human narratives. Civilizations are built on the assumption of continuity. So is morality. So is responsibility. We punish crimes because we assume futures. We make promises because we assume tomorrows. Vacuum decay does not invalidate these practices, but it reveals their contingency. They are meaningful only within a window that can close without notice. This does not make them pointless, it makes them local, temporary. Now consider how physics treats this. Physics does not panic, it does not moralize. It simply states that the universe has multiple allowed states, and the current one is not guaranteed to persist. From physics' perspective, this is not a flaw, it is a feature. Energy minimization is fundamental. The universe prefers lower energy configurations. If the current configuration is not the lowest, then it is living on borrowed time, borrowed from nothing, no interest, no deadline. This is why physicists speak carefully. They do not say the universe will end. They say it can. And can is enough. Now let's turn this inward. You experience your life as a narrative, beginning, middle, anticipated future. Physics does not respect narrative structure. It allows interruptions, not just death. Death ends a story but leaves the world intact. Vacuum decay ends the conditions for stories. This means your life is not part of a guaranteed arc. It is a segment in a configuration that happens to allow arcs. For now, this realization often produces nihilism, but nihilism misunderstands the situation. Meaning is not invalidated by contingency, it is constrained by it. A flower that blooms for one day is not meaningless because it does not bloom forever. Its meaning is local. Its value is conditional. Your existence is similar. The universe does not owe you duration, but it has allowed you presence. That presence is not protected, which makes it neither sacred nor trivial. One, it makes it temporary. Now confront the final discomfort. If survival does not imply safety, then neither does intelligence. Being able to understand the risk does not reduce it. Awareness does not grant exemption. Physics does not negotiate. You cannot think your way out. You cannot innovate your way out. You cannot monitor your way out. There is no early warning system. There is no bunker. There is no escape velocity. This is not because humans are weak. It is because the threat is not something you can outrun. It is something you are embedded in. Now ask yourself one last question. If the universe can end without warning, and if survival offers no guarantee, and if observation is filtered by existence, then what does it mean that you are here right now? It does not mean the universe is safe. It does not mean the universe is stable. It does not mean the universe favors continuation. It means only this. At this moment, the configuration holds. Nothing more, nothing less. And that may be the most honest statement physics allows. In the final part, we will step away from physics. Not because physics fails, but because it stops speaking. We will ask what remains once you accept that existence is conditional, filtered and unpromised. Not how long the universe will last, but how meaning survives in a reality that makes no guarantees. At some point, physics stops talking. Not because it fails, but because it has said everything it can. It tells you what is permitted. It tells you what is not protected. It tells you that continuity is conditional, and then it goes silent. There is no final equation that explains what to do with this information. No appendix on how to feel about it. Physics does not assign meaning. It does not care whether the universe ending without warning feels unfair. Fairness is not a physical quantity. This is where the discomfort deepens. Not because the universe can end, but because the universe does not care whether that ending matters to you. You are used to systems that respond. If you work harder, you get better outcomes. If you prepare, you reduce risk. If you understand something, you can control it. Vacuum decay violates all three. No effort reduces the risk. No preparation helps. No understanding grants leverage. This creates a sense of helplessness. But helplessness is the wrong word. The universe is not oppressing you. It is not denying you control. Control was never part of the contract. You assumed it was. Now confront a quiet truth. Most of your meaning-making relies on permanence. You care about memory because you expect it to persist. You care about legacy because you expect future observers. You care about progress because you expect continuation. Remove permanence and these structures wobble. But wobble does not mean collapse. It means adjustment. The mistake is assuming meaning requires guarantee. It does not. Meaning has always been conditional. You just forgot. Even in a universe that lasts forever, your individual life does not. You already accept finitude. Vacuum decay simply removes the illusion that finitude ends neatly at the individual level. It expands it. This forces a recalibration. Meaning cannot be built on how long. It must be built on while the configuration holds. While experience is permitted, while awareness exists. This is not resignation, it is precision. Now consider a simple fact. At this moment, the universe allows complexity. Atoms bind, stars burn, neurons fire. This is not guaranteed. It is happening anyway. That is not trivial. It is rare in configuration space. Most possible universes do not allow this. Most energy arrangements are sterile. You are not entitled to existence, but you are participating in it. Right now, that participation does not require a future. It only requires a present. This is where meaning shifts, not upward. Inward meaning is not something the universe gives you. It is something that emerges inside permitted states, like temperature, like pressure. It exists locally. It does not need cosmic endorsement. Now confront the fear behind the fear. You are not afraid that the universe will end. You are afraid that if it ends without warning, then nothing mattered. This is an understandable reaction. It is also incorrect. Meaning is not retroactively erased by non-existence. A conversation does not become meaningless because it ends. A song does not become meaningless because it stops. A thought does not require eternity to be real. The universe ending does not nullify what occurred before. It only prevents continuation, and continuation was never promised. This reframing is difficult because human psychology equates lasting with valuable. Physics does not support this equation. Value is not conserved like energy. It is contextual, local, temporal. Now, consider something subtle. If the universe did end without warning, there would be no one to judge whether meaning was justified. No one to declare it wasted, no one to regret. Regret requires observers. This means the fear of meaninglessness after the end is incoherent. There is no after from any perspective that can evaluate meaning. Meaning exists where observers exist, and where observers cease, the question dissolves. This is not nihilism, it is boundary recognition. Now reflect on your own experience. You do not live your life moment by moment because you expect eternity. You live moment by moment because moments are happening. Vacuum decay does not change that. It only removes false comfort. You are still here. The configuration still holds. That is enough to act, enough to care, enough to choose. Physics does not take that away. It simply refuses to guarantee it indefinitely. This leads to a final realization. The universe does not owe you safety. It does not owe you warning. It does not owe you meaning. And yet, meaning arises anyway, not because the universe intends it, but because permitted structures can generate it, like sparks in a field, temporary, unsecured, real. This is the paradox. A universe that makes no promises still allows experience, still allows curiosity, still allows reflection, still allows you to ask questions it cannot answer. That is not cruelty, it is indifference paired with possibility. Now let's strip away the language of threat. Vacuum decay is not coming for you. It is not waiting, it is not approaching. It is simply allowed. So is sunrise, so is thought, so is silence. Physics describes a universe without narrative obligation. It does not guarantee survival, but it does not forbid significance. Significance does not require duration, it requires presence, and presence is happening now. This brings us to the final point. The most unsettling thing physics reveals is not that the universe can end without warning. It is that the universe continues without justification. There is no reason it is stable now. No explanation for why this configuration holds. It simply does. And because it does, everything else follows. Stars, life, awareness, questions. None of these are protected. All of them are real. For now, this is not a call to despair. Despair assumes expectation violated. Expectation was misplaced. This is a call to clarity, to stop grounding meaning in permanence, to stop confusing survival with safety, to stop asking physics for comfort. Physics offers structure. What you do inside that structure is not its concern, and perhaps that is the final truth. The universe is not a story designed to make sense. It is a system that happens to allow stories, briefly, silently, without promise. And the fact that you're inside one of those stories right now is not guaranteed, but it is happening. That may be all the meaning there ever was, and all there ever needed to be. Something changes after you understand this. Not immediately, not dramatically. There is no moment where the world collapses into meaninglessness, no emotional freefall. Instead, there is a quiet shift. You stop expecting reality to explain itself to you. Before this, you believed, even if unconsciously, that the universe was obligated to make sense, to be stable, to justify continuity, that if something existed, it did so for a reason. That belief is now gone, and nothing replaces it. This absence is uncomfortable because expectations are scaffolding. They hold your interpretation of the world in place. Remove them, and the structure feels exposed. But exposure is not destruction, it is contact. For the first time, you are not negotiating with reality. You are observing it without demands. And what you see is not chaos, it is indifference with structure. The universe does not behave randomly, it behaves consistently. But consistency is not kindness, and that difference matters. Once the illusion breaks, certain questions stop forming. You no longer ask, why would the universe allow this? You no longer ask, what is it building toward? You no longer ask, what is the point if it can all end? Those questions depended on an assumption that the universe was a participant in meaning. It is not. Meaning happens inside it, not with it. This realization strips away a subtle burden. You were never meant to justify existence. Existence was never a problem to solve. It was a condition, temporary, unsecured, ongoing, and that is enough. Now consider how this changes your relationship with time. Time no longer feels like a resource being used up toward a conclusion. It feels like a sequence of permitted moments. Each moment stands alone, not as a step towards something, not as an investment, just as presence. This does not make you reckless, it makes you precise. You stop postponing meaning until later. You stop treating the present as preparation, because preparation assumes a guaranteed future. Physics does not guarantee that. So attention shifts. You notice what exists now, not what is promised. This is not mindfulness as comfort. This is awareness without expectation, and that changes how fear works. Fear usually imagines a future event. Vacuum decay cannot be imagined properly. There is no scene, no sequence. Once you accept that, fear loses traction. Not because the risk is gone, but because fear needs narrative. And this ending has none. What replaces fear is not courage. It is neutrality. You stop bracing. You stop rehearsing disasters. You simply acknowledge that existence is not insured. And oddly, this stabilizes you. Because anxiety comes from pretending control exists where it does not. When that pretense dissolves, so does the tension. Now let's address a misconception. People assume that removing guarantees leads to despair. This is not what happens. Despair requires expectation betrayed, but here, expectation is corrected before betrayal. You are not disappointed. You are clarified. The universe is no longer a promise-breaking system. It is a permission-granting one. And permissions do not lie. They simply apply, or they don't. This changes how responsibility feels. Responsibility is no longer about preserving something forever. It is about participating honestly while it exists. You do not act to secure eternity. You act because action is possible now. That is not smaller. It is cleaner. Now consider relationships. Love often hides an assumption of permanence, that people will remain, that memories will persist. Once permanence is removed, love does not weaken. It sharpens. You stop loving as if time will protect it. You love knowing nothing is protected. This does not cheapen attachment, it intensifies it. Because what is temporary but real demands more attention, not less. Now look at knowledge. You were taught that science explains reality. It does not. It constrains it. Science tells you what cannot happen, what is allowed, what is consistent. It does not tell you why existence continues. And it does not need to. The mistake was asking it to. Once you stop doing that, science becomes quieter, more honest. It stops being a worldview and returns to being a tool, a precise one. Now consider the final illusion to fall, the idea that understanding something gives you power over it. This is not true at fundamental scales. Understanding vacuum decay does not help you survive it. Understanding gravity does not allow you to turn it off. Understanding entropy does not reverse it. Understanding is not control. It is orientation. It tells you where you stand. Nothing more, nothing less. Once you accept this, the universe feels less hostile, not because it changed, but because you stop demanding it care. Indifference stops feeling like rejection when you stop asking for approval. Now ask yourself something honestly. If the universe never owed you continuation, and if meaning was never guaranteed, and if existence was always provisional, then what exactly have you lost? Not safety, you never had it. Not permanence, it was assumed. Not promised. Not purpose, purpose was always local. What you lost was illusion, and illusions cost energy to maintain. Now notice something subtle. Despite everything you've learned, nothing feels urgent. The room is still there. Your body still functions. The world still behaves. This is not denial, it is accuracy. Vacuum decay does not loom, it does not stalk, it does not approach. It simply remains allowed. So does living, so does thinking, so does meaning. At this moment the configuration holds, and that is enough to act, enough to speak, enough to choose, enough to care. You are not living on borrowed time, you are living on unpromised time. That difference matters. Borrowed time implies debt. Unpromised time implies freedom. No one is waiting to collect. There is no ledger. Just conditions. Now here is the final shift. Once you accept that the universe does not guarantee meaning, you stop outsourcing it. You stop asking the cosmos to justify your choices. You stop expecting reality to validate significance. You understand that meaning is something that happens, not something that is approved. And that understanding is stable, more stable than the universe itself, because it does not depend on duration. It depends on presence. This is not optimism. It is alignment. Alignment with how reality actually works. Temporary structures, local significance, unsecured continuation, and within that, genuine experience. That is not tragic, it is exact. The universe does not need to last forever for this moment to exist. This moment does not need a future to be real. And if the universe were to end without warning, it would not invalidate what happened before. It would simply stop. No commentary, no verdict, no judgment. Which means the meaning you create now does not need to be defended against erasure. It exists where it exists. And where it does not, there is no one left to argue otherwise. This is the final clarity. Not that nothing matters, but that mattering does not require guarantees. Only participation. And participation is happening now. There is a moment when the mind stops resisting, not because it agrees, not because it is convinced, but because there is nothing left to argue against. You understand now that the universe does not promise continuity. You understand that survival does not imply protection. You understand that existence is permitted, not guaranteed. And strangely, the tension fades. This is where most people expect despair. It doesn't arrive. Because despair depends on loss, and nothing has been taken from you. You still breathe, you still think, you still experience. The world has not changed, only your expectations have. Before this, you lived as if reality were a contract, as if stability were owed, as if tomorrow were implicit. Now you see that none of this was written anywhere, and that realization does something unexpected. It simplifies life. When guarantees vanish, excess concern vanishes with them. You stop trying to secure what cannot be secured. You stop protecting illusions. You stop rehearsing futures that were never promised. Attention returns to what exists, not urgently, not desperately, accurately. This is the difference between panic and clarity. Panic imagines threat approaching. Clarity sees conditions holding. At this moment, the universe allows structure. So you live inside structure. Nothing more is required. Now consider how this reframes responsibility. Responsibility used to feel like preservation, like maintaining something indefinitely. That was never realistic. Nothing lasts indefinitely. Responsibility is not about forever, it is about now. About acting with awareness inside a temporary configuration. This removes a quiet pressure you didn't know you were carrying. You are not responsible for saving the universe. You are not responsible for making meaning eternal. You are not responsible for guaranteeing outcomes. You are responsible for participation. For how you move inside the allowed moment, that is a smaller responsibility, and a more honest one. Now let's talk about fear again. Fear assumes continuity. It imagines future pain. Vacuum decay does not produce future pain. It produces absence. Once this is understood, fear loses its structure. There is nothing to picture, nothing to brace for. This does not make you reckless, it makes you grounded. You stop borrowing anxiety from imagined futures. You deal only with what exists. This is not courage, it is precision. Now observe something subtle. When people believe the universe is safe, they waste attention. They postpone care. They defer presence. They treat moments as replaceable. When safety disappears, moments sharpen. You listen more carefully. You notice more fully. You engage without assumption, not because time is running out, but because time is not stocked. There is no warehouse of moments waiting. There is only what is currently allowed. This does not create urgency. It creates intimacy. Now consider creativity. Creativity often suffers under the weight of permanence. People ask whether something will matter, whether it will last, whether it will be remembered. These questions freeze action. In a universe that owes you nothing, these questions dissolve. You create because creation is possible. You speak because speech exists now. You do not need permanence to justify expression. Expression is its own condition. Now think about identity. You used to think of yourself as a continuous object, a stable narrative moving forward. Physics does not support this view. You are a process, a pattern that reassembles moment by moment as long as conditions permit. This does not reduce you, it explains you. Identity is not stored somewhere safe, it is regenerated continuously. And that is enough. Now look outward. The universe appears vast, silent, indifferent. Before, this felt threatening. Now it feels accurate. Indifference does not oppose you. It simply does not include you as a priority. This is not rejection. Rejection requires intention. Indifference is neutral, and neutrality is not hostile. Now consider the final illusion that dissolves here, the idea that comfort is the goal. Comfort depends on guarantees, it depends on expectation alignment. Reality does not offer this. What it offers instead is coherence. The universe behaves consistently while it behaves. That consistency is enough to act, to build, to care. You do not need a promise of tomorrow to make today meaningful. You only need today to exist. And it does. Now ask yourself something honestly. If the universe were guaranteed to last forever, would your actions matter more, or would they blur into infinity? Finitude gives shape. Contingency gives contrast. A note matters because it ends. A moment matters because it does not repeat. An experience matters because it is not insured. This was always true. Physics did not create this condition, it revealed it. Now observe how quiet the conclusion is. There is no final revelation, no ultimate answer, no cosmic explanation waiting. The universe does not resolve into meaning. Meaning resolves inside the universe, briefly, locally. Enough. This is not surrender. Surrender implies defeat. Nothing has defeated you. You are simply no longer pretending the universe is obligated to explain itself. That pretense was heavy. Now it's gone, and in its place is something lighter. Not hope, not despair. Alignment. You are aligned with how reality actually functions. Temporary structures, unsecured continuation, local significance, and within that, awareness. This awareness does not need protection. It does not need to last forever. It does not need validation. It exists right now, and that is sufficient. The universe may end without warning. That possibility remains, but it no longer dominates thought, because domination requires narrative. And you have stepped outside that narrative. You are not waiting for the universe to reassure you. You are participating while participation is possible. This is not bravery, it is honesty. And honesty is stable even when reality is not. This is the final posture. Not fear, not hope, not denial. Presence without guarantees. And if the universe continues, this posture remains valid. If it does not, there is no contradiction, because meaning did not depend on continuation, only on existence. And existence happened. That is all. After everything has been stripped away, something remains. Not an answer, not reassurance, not a system you can rely on. What remains is orientation. You are no longer asking the universe to behave. You are no longer waiting for confirmation that things will continue. You are no longer measuring meaning by duration. You are simply oriented inside what exists. This is a subtle change, but it reshapes everything. Before you lived as if reality were a structure that could be trusted if understood well enough. Now you understand that understanding does not produce guarantees. And strangely, this does not hollow experience. It clarifies it. You stop treating existence like a resource to be managed. You stop treating time like something owed. You stop negotiating with the future. The future was never a partner in the conversation. It was an assumption. Now, let's address what people usually miss at this stage. They think removing guarantees removes motivation. They think if nothing is promised, nothing is worth doing. This is backwards. Motivation based on guarantees is fragile. It collapses when promises fail. Motivation based on presence does not. You do things now not because they will last, but because they are possible. This is a stronger foundation. It does not depend on hope. It does not depend on fear. It does not depend on outcome. It depends on condition. And the condition at this moment is allowance. Allowance for thought. Allowance for action. Allowance for meaning to arise locally. That is sufficient. Now consider how this reframes effort. Effort used to be an investment in permanence. You work towards stability, legacy, security. But permanence was never guaranteed. Effort now becomes alignment. You act in ways that fit the current configuration of reality. You speak because speech exists. You learn because understanding exists. You build because structure exists. Not because these things will endure, but because they are permitted now. This is not resignation. It is coherence. Now look at the universe again through this lens. It is not cruel. It is not benevolent. It is not empty. It is conditional. Everything that exists does so because conditions allow it. Stars burn while conditions allow fusion. Life emerges while chemistry allows complexity. Awareness appears while neural patterns remain stable. Nothing here is exceptional. Nothing is protected. And yet, everything that happens is real. That is the paradox most people avoid. They want reality to either promise meaning or deny it. It does neither. Meaning arises without endorsement, and that makes it honest. Now consider how this changes the idea of endings. An ending without warning is only terrifying if you expect warning. Once that expectation dissolves, the ending becomes what it always was, a cessation of permission. Not punishment, not judgment, not consequence, just a boundary. Boundaries do not need drama, they simply exist. This is why the universe ending without warning is not a betrayal. There was no agreement, there was only continuation, until there isn't. And that is how everything else in reality works. Now turn inward. You are also conditional. Your thoughts persist while neural activity persists. Your identity persists while patterns reassemble. Your awareness persists while conditions hold. You already live inside conditional existence. Vacuum decay does not introduce fragility. It reveals it, and fragility is not the same as weakness. Fragile things can be precise. Fragile things can be intense. Fragile things can be meaningful. They simply cannot be assumed to last. Now consider silence. After all the arguments, all the physics, all the implications, silence arrives. Not as emptiness, as space. The space where you stop asking the universe to speak. This silence is not threatening. It is neutral. It is the same silence that existed before explanations. And within it, experience continues. This is important. Understanding does not replace experience. It sits beside it. You do not stop living because guarantees vanish. You live differently, with fewer assumptions, with less deferred attention, with more accuracy. Now let's confront the final reflex that tries to return, the desire to turn this understanding into a rule, to say, therefore nothing matters, or therefore everything matters more. Both are attempts to finalize meaning. Finality is the habit you are unlearning. Meaning does not need a conclusion. It functions locally, moment to moment, context to context. You do not need a universal verdict. You need orientation, and you have it. You know the universe does not promise continuation. You know survival does not imply safety. You know observation is filtered by existence. You know endings do not announce themselves, and you also know this. At this moment, the configuration holds. That knowledge is enough to stand on. Now consider how small this makes the question of why. Why does the universe exist? Why does anything happen? These questions used to feel urgent. Now they feel optional. Not meaningless, optional. You can ask them if you want, but you no longer need their answers to proceed. Because proceeding was never contingent on explanation. It was contingent on permission, and permission exists. Now, this shifts the emotional center of gravity. You stop feeling watched by the universe. You stop feeling judged by outcomes. You stop feeling late. There is no schedule you are failing to meet. There is no cosmic expectation you are disappointing. There is only participation while participation is possible. That is not pressure, it is freedom without illusion. Now observe how ordinary everything becomes again. The world returns to being what it always was. Not magical, not doomed, not secured, just present. And presence is not diminished by understanding its limits. It is sharpened by it. This is the last adjustment. Not fear dissolving, not hope emerging, but drama leaving. You stop narrating reality as if it were building towards something. You let it be what it is, a system that behaves, until it doesn't. And inside that system, moments occur, thoughts occur, choices occur, and those occurrences do not require justification beyond occurrence. This is not a philosophy. It is alignment with how reality operates. Now ask yourself one final question, not to answer it, but to notice it. If the universe can end without warning, and if nothing is promised, and if meaning is local, then what are you doing right now? Not in the abstract, actually. Reading, listening, thinking. These are real. They do not need protection. They do not need to last forever. They do not need to be remembered. They are happening, and that is the only condition meaning ever required. Everything else was an added expectation. Now the expectation is gone, and what remains is quieter, clearer, truer to how reality actually functions. No guarantees, no countdown, no warning, just permission, moment by moment, while it holds. There is nothing left to uncover now, no hidden equation, no final implication waiting behind a curtain. What remains is not mystery, it is familiarity. You have circled the idea long enough for it to stop feeling sharp. The universe can end without warning. Existence is conditional. Nothing is promised. These statements no longer shock. They rest. And in that resting, something important happens. You stop trying to resolve the universe. Resolution was never possible. Reality is not a puzzle designed to click into place. It is a system that behaves according to rules that do not consult your preferences. Once you accept that, the need for final answers dissolves. You do not feel incomplete without them, because completeness was never required to live. This is the moment where acceptance becomes quiet. Not dramatic, not heroic, just honest. You realize that much of your unease came from a subtle mismatch between expectation and reality. You expected guarantees. Reality offered conditions. You expected permanence. Reality offered continuation until it doesn't. You expected meaning to be certified by the future. Reality allowed meaning to occur locally, without validation. The discomfort was not caused by the universe, it was caused by expectation. And now expectation has softened. This is not resignation. Resignation implies giving up something owed. Nothing was owed. This is alignment. Alignment with a universe that does not negotiate but does not interfere either. Now let's look carefully at what has changed.
You still plan.
You still think. You still care. But planning no longer assumes inevitability. Thinking no longer assumes resolution. Caring no longer assumes preservation. You act without the safety net. Not recklessly, clearly. The safety net was always imaginary, and imagination, while powerful, is not the same as structure. Structure is what physics provides, and structure is enough. Now consider the idea of the end one last time. An ending without warning feels frightening only when you expect a warning. But why did you expect one? Because human systems give warnings. Bodies fail gradually. Machines wear down, stories foreshadow their conclusions. The universe is not a human system, it does not foreshadow. It does not narrate, it does not care whether you are ready. This is not cruelty. Cruelty requires intent. This is simply how systems behave when they are not designed for you. And this realization changes how you relate to uncertainty. Uncertainty no longer feels like a problem to solve. It feels like a condition to inhabit. You stop trying to reduce it to zero. Zero uncertainty would require omniscience, and omniscience is not permitted inside the universe. So instead of fighting uncertainty, you accommodate it, you move with it. This does not weaken decision-making, it strengthens it, because decisions are no longer postponed until certainty arrives. Certainty was never coming. Now think about silence again. Earlier, silence felt ominous. The quiet universe seemed threatening. Now silence feels neutral. It is simply the absence of commentary. The universe is not speaking because it has nothing to say, not because it is hiding something. You projected voice where there was only process, and removing that projection changes everything. You are no longer waiting for reality to reassure you. You are no longer interpreting stability as a message. You are no longer reading intention into continuation. You are observing what is happening, nothing more, nothing less. Now observe the ordinary world through this lens. Light still enters rooms, objects still fall, time still passes. These things do not feel diminished, they feel clarified. You no longer mistake repetition for promise. You no longer confuse consistency with obligation. You simply acknowledge that, for now, the configuration holds. And because it holds, you live. This is enough. Now let's address the last question that tends to linger. If nothing is promised, why not withdraw? Why not disengage? Why not treat everything as temporary and therefore insignificant? This question misunderstands how significance works. Significance does not require permanence. It requires relation. A conversation matters while it is happening. A thought matters while it is being thought. A choice matters while it shapes conditions. The universe ending later does not reach back in time to nullify experience. Nullification requires perspective, and there is no perspective outside existence that evaluates it. This is a critical point. You were afraid that an unannounced ending would retroactively erase meaning, but erasure requires a witness. If existence stops, there is no vantage point from which meaning is declared void. Meaning does not need cosmic approval, it exists where experience exists. And where experience ends, the question ends with it. This realization is subtle but decisive. It removes the fear of cosmic invalidation. Nothing is waiting to judge whether your life counted. Counting is a human habit. The universe does not keep tallies. Now look back at the beginning of this journey. You started with stability, with trust, with the assumption that reality would continue because it always had. That assumption has been dismantled, but what replaced it is not emptiness, it is accuracy. You now see stability as a condition, not a guarantee. And conditions can hold without promises. This is how physics works. This is how reality works. Now let's say something that feels almost paradoxical. Understanding that the universe can end without warning does not make life fragile. It makes it unsecured. Fragility implies vulnerability to damage. Unsecured implies lack of insurance. These are different. Life has always been unsecured. You simply forgot. And forgetting was comfortable. But comfort is not accuracy. Now accuracy is returned, and accuracy is calm. Calm because it does not fight reality, it moves with it. This is why the end of this series does not feel like an ending. Nothing is being concluded. No claim is being finalized. There is no moral, just a position. You stand inside a universe that does not guarantee continuation. You stand inside a moment that exists anyway. You act because action is possible. You care because caring occurs. You think because thinking is permitted. No further justification is required. This is not existential heroism. It is ordinariness without illusion. Now let the final thought land gently. If the universe were to end without warning, there would be no shock, no betrayal, no realization. There would simply be no next moment. And until that happens, there is this moment. It does not need protection. It does not need to last forever. It only needs to be what it is. And it is. Right now, this is the quiet acceptance. Not acceptance of an ending, acceptance of conditional existence. And conditional existence is not a flaw. It is the only kind there has ever been. The universe does not promise to continue, but it is continuing. And while it does, life happens. Thought happens. Meaning happens. Without warranty. Without warning. Without permission. And that is not something to fear. It is simply the shape of reality. After everything settles, the world looks the same. Walls still hold their shape. Light still falls across surfaces. Time still appears to move forward in small, predictable steps. Nothing announces that your understanding has changed. That is the strange part. You expected revelation to transform perception dramatically, to reframe the room, to distort the day. It doesn't. Instead, what changes is how little you ask of reality. You stop waiting for confirmation that the world will continue behaving. You stop interpreting repetition as reassurance. You stop translating stability into promise. And without those demands, the ordinary becomes lighter, not because it is safer, but because it is no longer required to be. You notice how often you used to treat continuity as a favor, as something granted. Now you see it as a condition. Conditions hold until they don't. That was always true. The only difference is that you no longer pretend otherwise. This alters how you move through ordinary time. Morning is no longer the start of a guaranteed sequence. Evening is no longer a checkpoint toward tomorrow. They are simply states that occur while the configuration holds. You drink water, you read, you pause. None of these actions require a future to justify them. They require presence. And presence exists. Now, this is where the language of after stops being useful. There is no after this realization, there is only return. Return to ordinary activities without the background hum of expectation. You still plan, but plans are no longer contracts with the universe. They are preferences. You still hope, but hope is no longer leveraged against certainty. It is just desire. You still worry, but worry loses its claim to authority. It is recognized as habit, not prophecy. This recalibration is quiet. It does not announce itself. It shows up as less urgency to explain, less pressure to justify, less need to extract meaning from outcomes. You stop asking whether moments count. Counting requires permanence. Moments count because they occur. That is all. Now consider how this changes memory. Memory used to function as evidence that things were real and therefore should continue. You remember yesterday and assume tomorrow. But memory is not a bridge to the future. It is a record of what was permitted, nothing more. When you see memory this way, it becomes lighter. You stop asking it to guarantee continuity. You let it simply be what it is, a trace. And traces do not imply repetition, they only imply occurrence. This understanding extends to history. History is often treated as proof of stability. Civilizations have lasted. Stars have burned for billions of years. Therefore, things will continue. This logic is comforting and flawed. Duration does not imply obligation. History describes what has happened, not what must. Physics does not inherit commitments from the past. It allows patterns. Patterns persist until they don't. Now reflect on how often you used to search for meaning in scale. You looked to vastness for reassurance, to the size of the universe as evidence that it would outlast you. But scale does not grant security. Large systems fail quietly all the time, not with explosions, with transitions. Understanding this removes the need to be impressed by magnitude. You stop treating the universe as a backdrop designed to support your story. It is simply the system in which stories happen, temporarily. This does not shrink you. It locates you accurately. Now think about progress. Progress once implied accumulation toward a stable end, a future where things settle into safety. But safety was never the endpoint. There is no endpoint. There is only ongoing permission. Progress becomes refinement within permission. Not advancement toward guarantee. You improve conditions while they exist. You do not attempt to secure them indefinitely. This removes a subtle frustration. You stop measuring success by permanence. You measure it by coherence. Did this action fit the conditions that existed? Did it reduce friction now? Did it increase clarity now? These questions are answerable. The others were not. Now look again at uncertainty. Earlier, uncertainty felt like a flaw in knowledge, something to reduce. Now it feels structural. Not a bug, not a temporary gap. Uncertainty is not something that will be solved. It is something that exists because the universe does not encode its future. This does not paralyze you. It frees you from waiting. You no longer pause action until certainty appears. Certainty is not a prerequisite for participation. It never was. Now consider the final shift in how you view endings. Endings once implied resolution, a conclusion that explained what came before. Vacuum decay offers no such narrative. It is not a conclusion, it is a cessation. This strips endings of their authority. They no longer retroactively define meaning. They simply mark the limit of continuation. This reframing is essential. You were afraid that an unannounced ending would steal significance from everything preceding it. But theft requires a thief, and vacuum decay has no agency. It does not reach backward. It does not judge. It does not interpret. It simply ends permission. Meaning does not need defense against that. Meaning exists where experience exists, and when experience ends, so does the question. This realization settles something deep. You stop needing the universe to agree with you. You stop asking it to validate your choices. You stop worrying about cosmic verdicts. There is no jury, there is only structure, and structure is enough to live inside. Now consider language. Language evolved to predict, warn, and promise. It struggles with conditions that do not announce themselves. This is why ending with no warning feels unsettling. It resists narration. But not everything needs to be narrated to be real. Silence does not mean absence of truth. It means absence of commentary, and commentary was never required. Now return to the everyday world one more time. You notice how little of your life depends on cosmic guarantees. You eat because hunger occurs. You sleep because fatigue occurs. You speak because speech occurs. These actions do not reference eternity. They reference conditions. And conditions are present. This is sufficient. You realize that most of your life already operates without guarantees. You only imagined guarantees were there. Physics did not remove them, it exposed the imagination. This exposure is not loss, it is correction. Now sit with this final observation. The universe can end without warning. This statement no longer feels threatening, not because it is false, but because you no longer expect warning. Expectation was the source of fear. Remove expectation and the statement becomes descriptive, neutral. It describes a system that does not narrate itself. That is all. You are not living under threat. You are living under condition. And condition has always been the case. This understanding does not ask you to live differently in dramatic ways. It asks you to stop misinterpreting stability, to stop borrowing certainty from repetition, to stop asking reality for commitments it never made. Once you stop doing that, the ordinary world becomes easier to inhabit, not because it is safer, but because it is honest. And honesty is stable in a way guarantees are not. Guarantees can be broken. Honesty simply describes. The universe describes. It does not promise. And in that description, life unfolds, moment by moment, without warning, without assurance, without need for either. This is not the end of the story. It is the absence of a story about endings. And in that absence, the ordinary continues, quietly, precisely, while it holds. There is one habit that lingers longer than the others. Even after expectations dissolve, Even after guarantees are abandoned, even after the universe is seen as conditional rather than committed, the mind still waits. It waits for a signal, not a warning of the end, but a sign that understanding has finished, that there is nothing left to adjust. This habit is subtle. It feels like patience. It feels like openness, but it is neither. It is the expectation that insight eventually concludes. Reality does not conclude, it only continues until it doesn't. An understanding behaves the same way. You do not arrive at a final position. You arrive at a posture, a way of standing inside uncertainty without leaning against imagined supports. This posture is not rigid, it is adaptable, because adaptability is the only stable response to a system that makes no promises. Once you accept this, another illusion loosens its grip. The illusion that acceptance is an endpoint. Acceptance is not a finish line, it is a way of moving without resistance. You do not accept conditional existence once and move on. You re-encounter it daily, in small moments, in ordinary choices. When plans change, when outcomes diverge, when continuity is interrupted in ways far smaller than cosmic endings. Every interruption is a reminder, not of fragility, but of how often you assumed continuation. Now look closely at how this shows up in everyday thought. You still catch yourself saying, later I'll understand. Later things will settle. Later this will make sense. Later is a projection of stability. It assumes the system will continue long enough to accommodate resolution. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. And the point is not to fear that uncertainty. The point is to stop organizing meaning around it. You do not need later to justify now. Now is already justified by existence. This reframes patience. Patience is no longer waiting for conditions to improve. It is remaining aligned with the conditions that exist. That alignment does not require optimism, does not require pessimism. It requires accuracy. Accuracy about what is present. Accuracy about what is not guaranteed. Now consider how this affects regret. Regret often depends on imagined alternative futures. If only I had known. If only I had waited. If only things had lasted longer. These thoughts assume that continuity was available and misused. In a conditional universe, this assumption collapses. You did not misuse permanence. Permanence was never on offer. This does not erase responsibility. It refines it. Responsibility becomes local. You are responsible for how you act under the conditions that existed, not for outcomes that required guarantees. This shift reduces self-judgment, not because mistakes disappear, but because the framework that magnified them dissolves. Now observe how this understanding treats loss. Loss is not evidence that something failed. It is evidence that conditions changed. This applies to small losses and large ones. Connections end. Structures dissolve. Patterns stop assembling. Not because they were wrong, but because the configuration no longer supported them. Seeing loss this way does not numb grief, it contextualizes it. Grief remains, but it no longer demands cosmic explanation. It no longer asks the universe why it allowed change. Change was always permitted. Stability was the temporary condition. Now consider how often you sought reassurance in scale. You looked to vast time spans, deep space, ancient laws. You thought endurance implied safety, but endurance is not defense, it is just persistence. This realization shifts awe. Awe no longer comes from how long something lasts. It comes from the fact that it occurs at all. The universe does not need to be eternal to be astonishing. It only needs to exist. And existence is happening right now. This is the final habit to let go. The habit of asking reality to justify itself. Once you stop doing that, a quiet competence emerges. You move through the world without demanding explanations for its continuation. You act without assuming future validation. You care without requiring permanence. This does not make life smaller, it makes it cleaner. Now let's return one last time to the idea of an ending with no warning. Earlier, this phrase felt ominous. Now it feels descriptive. Not dramatic, not cruel, just accurate. Most things end without warning. Moments pass, thoughts fade, states change. Warnings are human constructs. They are tools for systems that communicate intention. The universe does not communicate intention, it exhibits behavior. And behavior does not announce transitions. This understanding removes the sense of betrayal. You are no longer surprised by silence. Silence is expected. Now observe how this shifts trust. You do not trust the universe to continue. You trust it to behave consistently while it behaves. That trust is narrow, but it is reliable. It does not overreach. It does not collapse when conditions change, because it never assumed more than was offered. This is the difference between faith and alignment. Faith demands assurance. Alignment requires accuracy. Accuracy is sustainable. Now notice something important. Despite all of this, you still wake up. You still engage. You still care. Understanding conditional existence does not paralyze life. It removes unnecessary friction. Life becomes less about securing the future and more about inhabiting the present conditions well. This is not a philosophy. It is a description of how systems operate. You operate while conditions allow operation, no more, no less. Now ask yourself quietly, if the universe owes you nothing, and if existence is conditional, and if endings do not announce themselves, what remains worth doing? The answer is not abstract, it is immediate. Whatever fits the current configuration. Whatever reduces friction now, whatever deepens clarity now. These are not grand goals, they are precise ones. Precision survives uncertainty. Grand narratives do not. Now observe the final transformation. Earlier, uncertainty felt like a threat. Then it felt like a limit. Now it feels like a background condition, like gravity. You do not argue with gravity, you move with it. Uncertainty becomes something you account for, not something you eliminate. This is maturity of understanding, not resolution. There is no resolution, only orientation. Orientation inside a system that does not narrate itself. Now let the last expectation dissolve. The expectation that this understanding will make everything feel complete. Completeness is another promise. Reality does not offer it. And that is fine. You do not need to feel complete to live accurately. You need to be aligned with how things work. And how things work is simple once illusions are removed. Conditions hold. Patterns assemble. Experience occurs. Then conditions change. No warning, no verdict, no explanation required. This is not bleak. It is precise. Precision does not comfort, but it stabilizes. And stability does not require promises. It requires coherence. This is the coherence you have now. You no longer ask the universe to commit. You no longer treat survival as evidence of safety. You no longer confuse duration with meaning. You move within what exists, and what exists fully. For now, that is not a limitation. It is the shape of reality. And once you stop asking it to be otherwise, there is nothing left to resist, only to participate. While it holds. #***. Physics predicts an ending with no warning. ###**. Part 13. The shape of participation. There is a moment when even orientation stops feeling new. Not because it has faded, but because it has settled into habit. You no longer actively remind yourself that existence is conditional. You simply move as if it is. This is not philosophical effort. It is behavioral adjustment, like learning the shape of a room in the dark. At first, every step is careful, every movement deliberate. Later, the room is still dark, but your body knows where it is. This is where you are now. You are not thinking about the universe ending without warning. You are living inside a system where that possibility no longer demands attention, because attention has limits. And you no longer spend it arguing with reality. This is what participation looks like. Not belief, not hope, not fear, participation. You do what can be done while it can be done. That is the entire rule set. Now, look carefully at how this reframes effort. Effort once leaned toward preservation. You worked to secure outcomes, to make things last, to build something that would resist change. Change was treated as failure. Now, effort leans toward fit. You work to align actions with current conditions. You do not demand permanence from structures that were never built for it. You build lightly, not carelessly, precisely. This precision changes your relationship with success. Success is no longer measured by how long something survives. It is measured by how well it functioned while it existed. A conversation succeeds if it clarifies something. A creation succeeds if it expresses something. A decision succeeds if it reduces friction now. Longevity becomes incidental, not irrelevant, just secondary. Now consider how this shifts conflict. Conflict often arises when expectations collide with conditions. You expect continuity. Conditions change. You expect agreement. Conditions diverge. When expectations are loosened, conflict loses fuel. You still disagree. You still choose. But you do not treat outcomes as violations of a contract. There was no contract. There was only alignment or misalignment. This does not make you passive. It makes you accurate. Now observe something subtle. As guarantees dissolve, gratitude changes shape. Earlier, gratitude felt like appreciation for safety, for continuation, for stability. Now gratitude feels quieter. It is appreciation for occurrence. That something happens at all. That a moment assembles. That experience is permitted. This gratitude does not depend on duration. It is renewed, moment by moment, because permission is renewed, moment by moment. Now think about attention again. Attention used to be fragmented by imagined futures. What if this lasts? What if it doesn't? What if this leads somewhere? These questions drained presence. Now attention consolidates. You notice what is actually happening, not because you force yourself, because there is nothing else to negotiate with. The universe is not listening, so you listen instead. Now look at how this affects fear in everyday situations. Small uncertainties used to echo the cosmic one. A plan changing felt like instability, an interruption felt like threat. Now they feel like normal expressions of conditional existence. You no longer escalate small changes into existential commentary. Change happens, you respond. That is all. Now let's talk about knowledge one last time. You were trained to treat knowledge as accumulation. More fact, more explanations, more certainty. But certainty was never the endpoint. Knowledge is orientation. It tells you where you stand relative to constraints. Once oriented, additional accumulation adds diminishing returns. You stop collecting explanations as protection. You collect only what clarifies action. This does not reduce curiosity. It refines it. You ask questions that can be acted on. You stop asking questions that require guarantees. Now return to the universe itself. It still does not speak. It still does not warn. It still does not promise. And now that silence feels appropriate. Not ominous, appropriate. Silence is what you expect from a system without intention. The mistake was hearing threat in it. Silence was never hostile. It was simply non-communicative. Now observe how this clarity affects your sense of scale. Earlier, the universe's vastness felt overwhelming. Now it feels proportional, not because you are larger, but because you stopped asking scale to reassure you. Scale does not care, it does not protect, it simply exists. You stop measuring yourself against it, you measure fit. Now reflect on the word participation. Participation does not require permanence. A note participates in a melody even if it ends. A thought participates in understanding even if it fades. You participate in reality by occurring within it. Nothing more is required. This reframing dissolves the final trace of urgency. You are not racing against an ending. You are moving within conditions. Endings do not chase. They arrive or they don't. Now ask yourself something honestly. If the universe ended without warning, would that negate this moment? No, it would simply prevent the next one. This distinction is everything. Meaning is not a chain that requires infinite links. It is a sequence of allowed states, each complete in itself. Now consider how this reframes legacy. Legacy once meant persistence beyond your presence, but persistence was never guaranteed. Legacy now becomes influence within conditions. What changed while you were here? What clarified? What aligned? These are local effects. They do not require eternity, they require contact. Now look again at the ordinary world. It has not become sacred. It has not become trivial. It has become accurate. Objects behave, patterns repeat, interruptions occur. Nothing here is exaggerated. Nothing is diminished. You simply stop projecting promises onto it, and without those projections, the world becomes easier to inhabit. Now reflect on the journey from part 1 to now. At the beginning, the idea of an ending with no warning felt destabilizing. It threatened meaning. It threatened safety. It threatened continuity. Now it feels like background knowledge. Important, but not dominant. This is the final transformation. Understanding no longer competes with living. It supports it. You are no longer bracing against the universe. You are moving with it. Not trusting it to continue, trusting it to behave while it behaves. That trust is narrow, but it is correct. Correctness is more stable than comfort. Now let the last idea settle. The universe does not promise, but it allows, and allowance is enough to participate. Participation does not require belief. It does not require optimism. It does not require reassurance. It requires presence. And presence is happening right now. This is the shape of participation, quiet, unsecured, sufficient. And if there is a final lesson here, it is not dramatic, it is practical. Stop asking reality to be different. Stop asking it to guarantee. Stop asking it to explain itself. It will not. And it does not need to, because while conditions hold, life occurs. And while life occurs, meaning arises, not because it is promised, but because it happens, moment by moment, without warning, without warranty, without need for either. This is not the end, it is not a conclusion, it is simply where you stand now, inside a system that does not speak, that does not warn, that does not promise, and yet allows you to be here, participating. While it holds, there is nothing left to add. Not because everything has been answered, but because answers are no longer the point. You have reached the place where explanation stops being useful. The universe has been described as accurately as it can be, a system without promises, without warnings, without obligation to continue. And yet, it continues. That contradiction no longer demands resolution. You are no longer waiting for reality to justify itself. You are no longer asking it to commit. You are simply here. This is the final adjustment. Not intellectual, not emotional, practical. You stop treating existence like a story that needs an ending to make sense. Stories need endings. Systems do not. Systems operate until they don't. And while they operate, things happen. You breathe. You notice. You think. These are not preparations for something else. They are the event itself. Earlier, the idea that the universe could end without warning felt destabilizing. It felt like the ground was missing. Now you see that the ground was never guaranteed. You were standing anyway. Nothing changed except your expectation. An expectation was doing all the work. This is why the final state is quiet. No revelation music, no final image, no moral delivered, just alignment. You align your understanding with how reality actually functions. Conditions hold, patterns assemble, experience occurs, then conditions change. No announcement, no exception. This does not make life smaller, it makes it precise. You stop inflating moments with imagined futures. You stop diminishing moments because they won't last. You allow them to be exactly what they are, complete. Now, the universe does not promise tomorrow, but it has allowed this moment. That is not a consolation prize. That is the only condition meaning ever needed. Meaning does not require permanence. It does not require witnesses beyond itself. It does not require cosmic approval. It exists where experience exists, and where experience ends, the question ends with it. There is no loss to measure, no verdict to fear, only cessation of permission. Until then, participation is real, and participation does not wait for guarantees. It happens. This is the final clarity. Not that the universe will end, not that it won't, but that neither outcome has authority over what exists now. Now does not borrow value from the future, it carries its own, and the universe ending without warning does not invalidate this moment. It simply prevents the next one. That distinction changes everything. So this is where it settles. No promise, no warning, no assurance. Just a system that allows experience to occur, and you inside it, participating, not because it will last, but because it is happening right now while it holds.